welcome or welcome back to the Sales Enablement Festival. I hope you're enjoying the event so far because we've got even more great content heading your way. Remember to have your questions at the ready and get the tailored answers you need from the experts themselves. Thank you again to our sponsors and partners for helping us bring this event to life. Don't forget, if you're enjoying the content from the festival, be sure to check out the SEC membership plans. You can find more information about this over on the Sales Enablement Collective website. Sit back and enjoy the next talk.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. This is Ryan coming from the Sales Enablement Collective. And now I would like to present you the next speaker, Govin Chowdhury, VP Business Planning and Sales Operation from London Stock Exchange Group. And in his talk, he will share his knowledge and ideas on how sales operations enable success. We can't wait for it. Govin, are you ready? Okay, let's give Govin 1 or 2 minutes for him to set up on his end, and he will put up his face cam and the mic on, and then get things started.
Okay, I was disabled by the camera. It says it's disabled by host. Could you please check?
Yes, I can hear you now. Can you turn on your face cam so I can see you like before?
Sorry, it says disabled by host. Could you please help enable it, the face cam?
Hold on. Can you try that again? I did not. Should be fine now. Yeah, I can see you.
Excellent. Thank you, Ryan, and good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Pleasure to be speaking to all of you, and I hope everyone is keeping safe and well in these tough times. I am Govind, as Ryan mentioned. I work with London Stock Exchange, and I'm based in Singapore. Today, I'm going to speak to you about how my teams, the sales ops function, enables success for our sales organization in the Asia-Pacific region. So before I get into my sort of presentation today, I wanted to share a bit more about the group. And I also want to just comment that I'm looking forward to this being an interactive session. So if in case you have questions or if anything from my side is not clear, please feel free to ask a question on the chat, and I'll be more than happy to answer questions as well. So just to give a brief introduction about the London Stock Exchange Group. London Stock Exchange, as I'm sure, is a very familiar name, the exchange based out of London. The group recently acquired Refinitiv, which was the legacy Thomson Reuters financial market business, and created a combined financial market infrastructure leader. So this is the new combined group, and I'm part of that organization based in Singapore. The combined group is about £6 billion in revenues and over 40 billion in market cap. So it's a truly now global organization working with the financial markets participants across the world. So let me just now get into my conversation. And before I talk about my team and the role of our sales leaders, I wanted to share with all of you a study which was kind of put together by Miller Hyman Group and a brief overview of how sales organizations are evolving in the new world. And as you can see, for most organizations, customer tends to be at the heart of the organizations, and more organizations are investing in sales enablement and operations capabilities to make them a real strategic partner for the sales management. So given the increasing importance of sales ops and how the team enables the sales leaders, I thought it would be useful to share some of the learnings or how we support the business and also learn from the industry as well on what we can do better as well. So let me move on to what we are doing at the London Stock Exchange Group. Like most organizations, if you look at our organization, we also continuously try to evolve ourselves and try and create a leading high-performance culture. So in order to create a strong sales culture, I believe the role of the sales manager is one of the most important and also the toughest in terms of making it happen. if you think about a sales manager, they are constantly being asked to manage the numbers, essentially report on pipeline, on their forecast, manage the team activities, make sure that the teams are meeting the customers and delivering what's needed for the customer. At the same time, they have to also coach and make sure that their teams are getting skilled as well, because there's always demand from changes in the market, and then there's always a need for people to provide like new trainings to their staff as well. So I'm going to talk about 3 core disciplines on where sales leaders focus their time. One is, of course, staffing and recruiting. Again, an important part of the role of sales manager. Coaching for performance. No surprise that coaching is, again, a big part of the managerial role. But last but not least, really the sales planning and execution. So all sales managers are expected to have a plan, including able to manage pipeline and forecast the business. And I believe that's where the sales ops teams, particularly at the London Stock Exchange Group, play a huge role in supporting the sales managers and making sure that we are enabling success as well as a culture of performance for our business. So let me talk briefly about how do we think about our resource, particularly when it comes to sales. In any organization, there are obviously a number of sales individuals, and they will all have different levels of competency. So we use a competency-based framework to really benchmark and rank our sales staff. And we work with an external agency to use and learn from them on how we can really look at our sales individuals and can understand their competency. So we created a framework to rank them A, B, or C players, depending on a set of criteria based on their ability to sell, their interaction with the customer, communication, closures of the past, etc. So we had a number of criteria listed. We have ranked all of our staff on based on that, and we also compare with the benchmark. Typically, A players in any organization tend to be the top 20%. Large volume of the players tend to be in that middle 70%, called the B players. And then the B players also tend to be further segmented into a high B, medium B, or low B. And then there's always a bunch of sellers who tend to be perhaps the laggards or C players, where, of course, there's a different kind of coaching needed for managing these individuals as well. So having this framework not only helps to understand where the sales force stands today, but it also helps in future hiring. So based on the current status of the breakup of A, B, and C players, we can then look for, obviously, gaps. For example, if the team is short on A players, look for those individuals and those characteristics when hiring. And similarly, obviously, when it comes to managing performance, look at performance as well, and for future decisions on coaching as well. So that's the first part of it in terms of looking at staffing and recruitment. The second point I mentioned was really a lot of focus on coaching as well, which is, again, a key part of any successful sales organization. And as I mentioned, because we have created a competency-based framework, we use that framework to really help our sales leaders also coach their team members. And we are able to plot every sales individual in the simple 2x2. And what we do is we look at their competency. And then, of course, performance is the actual sales performance of the past. So you can look at the last 6 months, last 1 year. This can really vary based on company to company. And then as you plot people based on competency, A, B, or C, as well as performance, you can see that they will definitely fall in different quadrants. And each of them will probably need a different style when it comes to coaching. So for your top player, salesperson who's really high on competency and higher performance, you really don't need a very directive kind of approach. You essentially need to make sure that they're motivated and then they're doing their best to really maximize their opportunity. Similarly, on the other end, there are individuals who perhaps lower performance and low on their competency, where, of course, there is a high directive and a high supportive behavior needed by the sales managers to make sure that they are coaching and making sure everybody is kind of uplifted and hopefully moving in the right direction. So coaching again becomes a pretty important part, and the sales ops teams helps provide some of that data to the managers so that they can really understand performance and help their teams. I want to switch to the last part, which was on sales planning and execution, and really the pipeline and opportunity management. Here, of course, it's a very big part of the sales manager job, and sales operations play a big role in supporting the pillars around managing performance. At London Stock Exchange, we focus on 4 key things. So the first one is creating territory, which is essentially managing and allocating customers to a coverage model so that we can create an optimal account management structure to manage those relationships. A large part of sales manager's role is to also manage the pipeline. So how do we manage the opportunity cycle across the different sales stages? And then ultimately, based on the pipeline management, how do we create a forecast for our business and really be able to create a business outlook? As a public listed company, we of course need to provide a forward-looking view as well. So, and I guess it doesn't matter what kind of organization you're managing or working with, every sales manager is expected to be able to forecast the business. So having a good understanding of pipeline and metrics can be really key in terms of creating a good forecasting culture at the business. So I'm going to talk briefly about each of these 4 pillars and how sales ops are obviously helping the sales leaders here to manage all of these pillars. The first item I want to cover is on territory. So when it comes to designing territory, again, I've spoken to many different leaders across different organizations, and each organization have their own approach. At LSEG, what we do is we look at revenue of our existing customers and the opportunity they present in terms of cross-sell and white space, in terms of growth, and we plot them on a 2x2 looking at where they are in terms of revenue today and where they are in terms of their opportunity. So this is a very simple model, again, quite self-explanatory in terms of what it gives as an output. So if you think about the businesses which are high revenue and high opportunity, those are your sweetest spots as the customers. You want to focus, retain, and grow. You want to put your maximum resources managing those type of accounts. And at the other end, where there is a low revenue and low opportunity, you want to maintain, of course, those accounts, but also make sure it's done in a very cost optimal way, because these are low revenue and low opportunity. So you have to be very mindful when it comes to resource allocation. There are obviously accounts where there'll be high opportunity, but yet for the business to penetrate, so low revenue and high opportunity, again, those are where you want to put your most hunting resources to be able to grow that book of business. And then the kind of bottom right, where there's high revenue today, but low opportunities, typically in the strategy, what we call them the cash cow. So that's the business, the accounts where we want to maintain the revenue and make sure that we sort of maintain the market share and drive efficiency in the model. So this type of analysis helps create a coverage model for us and allows us to create design a account management structure, which is the most optimal in maximizing the resources we have, and of course, maximizing the revenue opportunity for the business. So how does this translate into an account management structure? Let me briefly talk about it. As I mentioned, the matrix on the left allows us to think about a account management structure, which can, at a broad level, we create a face-to-face versus a remote management. So face-to-face is essentially where account managers are actually going and meeting customers in person. Of course, in times of COVID, that has obviously been limited, but typically in normal times, they would be on the ground meeting customers. And a remote management structure where typically the account managers manage a higher volume, but can manage most of the customer needs remotely. Of course, they can meet the customers if there is a need for it. So what it does is that we've created a coverage model and we have classified our accounts into 5 different types. So type 1 accounts are essentially the accounts where we see the most strategic value. so highest revenue and highest opportunities, and we dedicate the maximum face-to-face resources to type 1 accounts. Of course, type 2 and type 3 also we count as face-to-face, because these are also accounts where either there's already a large revenue or there is a large opportunity, and we want to ensure that we are putting in our best resources to engage with these customers. Where there is lower opportunity and lower revenue, we try and manage those accounts using a remote management model. As I mentioned, typically these are higher volume, lower value accounts, whereas the face-to-face models are lower volume, higher value accounts. And this model allows us to really optimize our coverage of accounts across Asia Pacific. So let's assume we have 1,000 accounts, we would classify each of these accounts into a coverage model, and assume we have, say, 20 account managers. We can then utilize and allocate accounts to each of these 20 account managers based on the model. So somebody who's managing a type 1 or a type 2 account will typically have a few accounts, but the revenue will be larger. And people who manage type 4 or type 5 accounts will certainly have many more accounts, but the overall revenue will be lower there, and hopefully an opportunity to grow, given there is a lot of white space and cross-sell there. So this allows us to set up a territory. I mean, this territory classification allows us to set up a account management structure, which is certainly optimal for us to utilize our resources and also maximize our opportunity. Let me switch, and again, this process of allocating accounts, managing the model, etc., is all supported by sales ops, and we work very closely with our sales leaders to make sure that they are giving the input, and we help them set up these accounts and then put them in CRM, make sure that each of these accounts get captured in the system, the right classification and the right account managers are allocated as well. So I'm going to switch to talk about pipeline and opportunity management. I do want to leave some time for questions as well. So pardon if I'm going a bit quickly. So now that we talked about territory and account structures, the other important aspect of a sales manager's job is to really manage the pipeline. And for us, managers focus on 3 key metrics: volume, velocity, and value, to ensure that they are managing the pipeline and making sure that we are, again, achieving and overachieving a quota. So let me talk about each of these 3 in a bit more detail. So the first one is pipeline volume. And I guess this is something, again, very common across organizations. People talk about as so there are different ways to measure volume. You could talk about the total size of the pipeline. You could talk about the average pipeline size. You could talk about volume versus plan. And you could talk about the growth in pipeline as well as a measure. At London Stock Exchange, the value or the target we use is a coverage ratio we call, which is pipeline versus plan. So we have a target of 3x. What it means is that if a sales individual has a quota of 100, we want to make sure that they have a pipeline of 300, which is 3x the plan, so that gives the manager a level of comfort that they can achieve their plan. So having some sort of a metric around measuring pipeline versus plan is a really helpful way to measure the volume of the pipeline, and can be very useful for the managers to understand how each seller is doing. So this 3x metrics can be measured at an individual level, it can be measured at a team level, and even at like a region level where we are in terms of our coverage. So looking at the historical closure rates and the volume of deals in the pipeline, a manager can then think about, okay, what is the likelihood of the pipeline to close and how much they can really bring in terms of sales. So this volume target really helps us create a benchmark and measure individuals and talk about, particularly in the coaching conversations, if the coverage is low, the managers can spend time on talking about where they are with their coverage and what can they do to increase the coverage as well. So that's the first metric. The second metric is about the value. So the value, again, it should reflect really what the firm wants to drive and what kind of solutions the customers want. So the value of the pipeline, you can look at the total value of the pipeline by different stages, etc. The focus we put there is around the average deal size. So that's like the total size, the value of the opportunity divided by the number of opportunities. And depending on the type of the products, we want to make sure that the deal size obviously gets bigger. So bigger deal sizes with a higher coverage indicates obviously a better, healthier pipeline, and allows the managers to then again have the right conversations with their staff to make sure that they are again focusing on the right customers, making sure that they are maximizing the selling and the value for the customer as well, and bringing in the maximum dollars for the company as well. So the value metric focus is really around the average deal size. And then the last one is on velocity. So velocity is really about how quickly are the deals moving through different sales stages, how many days are they sitting in a particular stage, so aging by stage or the length of sales cycle, etc. So different managers have different metrics. The metric we follow is average days to close. So the average days to close is again a very helpful metric to understand where the different deals are and what kind of success or challenges sales individuals are facing when it comes to converting pipeline into actual sales. Again, the average days also vary by the type of products. So certain type of products are, of course, longer in the nature in their sales cycle, and of course the other ones are lower. So we again calibrate based on the type of products. So all these metrics, how does that really help the sales manager in the end? So what does it all mean? I'm just going to summarize now, and I'm conscious that we may have to leave some time for questions. So what this does is all these metrics really help give the manager a better understanding of the overall book of business, where are the areas of interest, opportunity, and where there is concern in the pipeline. So each of these metrics, the context is very important. So without the right context, say average deal size, if we don't look at the average deal size in the context of the products we're talking, again, that can be a challenge. So we have to make sure that these metrics are looked at in the right context. All these metrics can really help the sales manager drive the right conversation with their individuals when it comes to coaching. And last but not the least, every sales manager is required to be able to forecast their business. So we want to make sure that they are really armed by quality data when it comes to forecasting. And these pipeline metrics, along with the size and shape of the pipeline, along with the actual deals, can help give them a very good view on where they expect the business to land. But I want to emphasize that the manager discretion is very important here, because managers need to obviously look at pipeline and understand what the pipeline is telling us, but at the same time, use their own discretion in terms of closure rates and look at the metrics and translate that into a forecast for the business. So the way it works for us is we provide the managers a set of pipeline metrics. The managers obviously use their own discretion, and then they create a forecast which goes as the official business outlook. Typically, we run that process bi-monthly, and of course, that sort of rolls up into a global number for the business leaders across the world to know how the business is performing. I want to close with a quote which I really like. This is from a very famous statistician. If you've studied statistics, you would know who Edwards is. Without data, you're just another person with an opinion. So I believe that successful sales managers are the ones who look at data, who look at what data is telling them about their teams and about their territory, and hopefully they use it to make the right decisions. And the sales ops teams plays a crucial role there in terms of providing this data and then making sure that the managers have the right input to produce the right output. So I'm going to pause here and check if there are any questions or thoughts. Love to hear any feedback, any things the audience, there are other metrics they're using or anything they would like to share. So I can see one question which has come up. What are some of the main hurdles you and your team have to run during the shift to digital and working from home? Have you changed the way you're using metrics to monitor performance? It's a great question, Jack. I think when the whole shift to working virtually happened sort of this time last year, I think the sales teams were so used to coming together and being in person and talking about the pipeline and management that when things moved to remote, the first few months took a lot of time in terms of making sure, the first few weeks were a bit challenging, given that the teams could not get together, the managers perhaps were having more of siloed conversations, and even in group discussions, people were not really comfortable all speaking up and talking about their challenges and deals in a very open way. So what we had to do was we had to make sure that the communication between managers and the sellers and that was the key. So the managers reached out, spent some extra effort having one-on-one conversations to ensure that sellers understand that even if they are working remotely, updating things like the CRM is equally important, making sure that they are still obviously speaking to the customer and understanding the deals. Of course, a lot of deals were delayed and customers were themselves putting them on hold. So making sure that gets reflected in the pipeline. So we took up a bit of time to get used to that. But I would say within a few weeks, the teams got a bit more comfortable about doing all this activities in a more remote way. And of course, it's now almost close to a year, so a lot of teams are still virtual. And we did see a dip in the use of CRM, but then we kind of got back up and making sure people were sort of engaging, particularly with the customers and putting in their activities. And to your second part on metrics, we did tweak a bit on the deal cycle, because we knew that particularly in COVID, the average deals to close metric, which we had looked in the past, would not be true. We were certainly seeing a longer sales cycle. So when it came to sort of using that metric, we adapted to the impact of COVID. Also, managers measure activities by sellers. So again, the type of activity changed. So we saw more phone calls and emails, perhaps a fewer meetings in the beginning, because many customers were themselves not comfortable to necessarily have meetings via video. So in the initial part of the virtual working, we saw a spike in emails and phone calls. And then in the latter half, we saw like meetings, even though virtual, coming back as a key activity. So again, when managers were monitoring performance, they had to obviously adapt to some of those metrics as well. I hope that answers the question and provides context of how working digitally and working from home has helped or has shifted some of the working. The other thing to note is a lot of the teams in APAC, in different parts of APAC, obviously are able to come back to the offices. So we've seen people now come back to the offices partially in China, in Singapore, Hong Kong, Australia, and that's really helping foster some of the collaboration, bringing back, we are using the time in the office for things like account planning and strategizing, where having people together is effective. But then, of course, when people are at home or working remotely, they continue to engage with the customers. And I would say that one of the biggest shifts have been that the customers themselves are a lot more comfortable now engaging remotely, because I guess everybody's here in the same boat. So we are trying to, now that some of the offices are opening, we are trying to create that blend where perhaps planning type activity happens in the office, and then individual activities can happen remotely as people kind of blend their working going forward. Okay, I'm conscious, Ryan, we are close to the half-an-hour slot.
Thank you for your presentation and then answering the questions here. I'm just give a last minute chance here. Do any of attendees here have a last questions to ask for Govind? I'm gonna wait for like a minute or so just to make sure. Do you have any sort of conclusion to make, Govind, just to wrap this up?
Yeah, I would just say people who are in sales ops and enablement roles, I guess the more individuals can be strategic and be data driven and engage with their sales managers, make sure that you are really bringing that insight and value in the discussions. The role of the organization, the ops and enablement organization, is obviously increasing, and I feel that the more people are strategic in their engagement, the higher people will value on the organization. So that's something which I always and be data driven. So I think that's something is very, very critical to make the function successful.
Thank you, Govind. We highly appreciate your contribution here. And then, yeah, I can see a lot of people saying they enjoyed the festival. Thank you, Govind, and everything. Yes, that's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you. So thank you for everyone. So I'm going to end this session here. Just we don't have any sort of last minute questions here. And by the way, for all attendees and the speaker, you can always rewatch the presentation post events with the ticket you have. All right. Cool. Take care, everyone. I'll see you guys next time. Cheers, Govind. Appreciate it again. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.